Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome into the latest edition of Tider Insider TV. As you heard, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa. Find out more at visittuscaloosa.com. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. We got a lot to cover tonight, obviously. We've got men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball, but we are going to begin with renewal. Spring is a time for renewal. It's renewal for Alabama football. The Crimson Tide started spring training on Monday. We got our first look at some new faces and some new coaches as well. Alabama started spring practice Monday morning at 8:30, and they'll practice Wednesday and Friday as well this week before taking off next week for spring break. So going to get 3 practices in, take off a week, come back and get the other 12 practices, of course, culminating with the 8A game on April the 12th. Crimson Tide, of course, was in helmets and shorts per NCAA rules. They worked both outside on the Thomas Drew Fields and inside in the Hank Crisp indoor facility. Good to see new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb on the field with the offense. Crimson Tide head coach Kalen DeBoer entering his second season. He certainly understands, Rodney, that 2024 did not meet expectations. Alabama missed out on the college football playoff, the 12-team playoff. It's his job to get Bama into that playoff in 2025. And let me bring in Rodney to kind of some analysis. First of all, you wrote a great piece on TiderInsider.com. I encourage people to read it. So you can kind of recap some of what you wrote in regard to what happened yesterday and the whole synopsis for the spring.
Well, you know, leading into spring, we've talked about it. There's been a lot of positive vibes. I know the coaching staff's been really excited. I think we saw that yesterday. Even though we didn't have a media viewing period, talking to Kalen DeBoer, you could tell. I mean, he feels really good about where they are right now. You've got about 11 guys out, though. I mean, you've got some defensive guys. You got Deontay Lawson's out. You've got cornerback Damani Jackson out. Of course, Justin Jefferson's limited too at linebacker. So you got a lot of guys. We've mentioned Caden Proctor that we expected him to at least be limited. He is. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities for young players, transfers to get a lot of reps, develop this spring. And I think right now, Gary, you look at it and it's really all positive. I know there's a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit. But you know, right now, day one, it's in the books. It
is. In this video, courtesy of the University of Alabama, Coach DeBoer met with the media afterwards. That's coming up in Coach Talk. And so, since we're holding the quarterbacks for after Coach Talk, as you said, though, Rodney, there are a lot of new faces, both from the transfer portal and from this signing class. And even though Alabama's bringing back a lot of good players, too, you get the sense, and I guess it's that way everywhere, but particularly with this being the second season for Kalen DeBoer, that there's kind of an open book for this roster in regards to who's going to earn playing time. You know, I'm sure there's some guys that, you know, based on what they did last year, have the inside track. But I kind of get the impression this coaching staff is saying, hey, we're starting over with a clean slate here. You got an opportunity to win a job.
Oh, I think it's totally different from last year when they weren't even familiar with their players. I mean, obviously, they got to watch film. They knew who some of the leaders were coming back. This is totally different this year. They've been here for a year, got a lot of familiarity with the players. Players have familiarity with the coaching staff. I think that's really important. Even Ryan Grubb, though he's a new coach, he was here for 3 weeks. Certainly, he's been on the same page with Kalen DeBoer for a long time. So, you know, yeah, there's some newness, but at the same time, Gary, I think that year experience together is going to pay a lot of dividends. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of different things this year in terms of, you know, kind of how they mesh together.
One area there's an opportunity is at tight end. We saw Dupree and Oats doing really well at the combo. They were the 2 strongest tight ends there, also caught the ball really well. Clavis is back, but they're going to use the tight ends, maybe even more than they did last year. There's an opportunity for some playing time there. Who are some guys outside of Cuevas, who obviously is kind of the incumbent to watch out for?
Well, we talked about guys being out. Danny Lewis, I think he's a guy, obviously, he's been around for a while. He's going to be out this spring, so that's going to open up some doors. I know that Kalen DeBoer did mention Cuevas yesterday. He mentioned Peter Knudsen, the transfer from Weber State. And then also there's a local kid, Jaden Hobson from Hillcrest that's transferred in. So I think those guys, you got Marshall Pritchett, who is a true freshman from the state of Georgia. I think is going to be a really good player eventually. Jay Lindsey, of course, from over in Butler. You look at him, Gary, physically on the hoof, 6'5". He's close to 260 pounds. So he's a really physical kid. And then I know it's not He's not here this spring, but remember the name Caleb Edwards out of the state of California, 6'6", 240. He's a guy that'll be here in the summer.
On defense, inside linebackers got two really good ones coming back in Deontay Lawson and Justin Jefferson, but they're limited. So one guy to watch for is Nikhai Hill-Green, the transfer from Colorado, and some other inside linebackers with those two not doing a lot, chance to get a lot of reps.
You know, Gary, I was looking at it today. Nikhai Hill-Green, he's got over 200 career tackles.
He's been a productive football player at a lot of places.
Yeah, a lot of places. He's obviously started at Michigan. He went to Charlotte. He was at Colorado last year where he made 82 tackles. 11 and a half of those tackles were for losses, a couple of interceptions. Caden Jones is a guy that was last year was a true freshman, played some. You look at him, he's 6'4", 230. He's got really good size, an outstanding athlete. 3 true freshmen to keep an eye on. Duke Johnson out of the state of Georgia, Abdul Sanders out of California, and Luke Metz, another outstanding player out of the state of Georgia. Those are 3 inside linebackers that are true freshmen, guys that are going to get a lot of reps this spring.
And finally, in the secondary, they play a lot of secondary people. Did last year. A lot of young guys got experience, but a chance for a lot of young guys to get an opportunity this spring, too, because they're going to play a lot of defensive backs, both at corner and at the safety positions.
Yeah, and I thought Mo Lindquist probably did as good a job as anybody last year, maybe in the SEC country, with what he did, taking over. Basically lost 3 first-round corners. And what he did rebuilding that with Damani Jackson, of course, he's out. Zabian Brown is in this spring. Cam Calhoun, the transfer from Utah, I think he's got a great opportunity. Dejon Lee is a name to remember. I know probably most Alabama fans are very familiar with him out of the state of California. You don't find many 6'4", 200-pound cornerbacks. So those are a couple of guys, I think, in the secondary. If you want to talk about safety, too, Ivan Taylor is a guy that's going to get a lot of opportunities with Sab out. Zayd Mincy, don't forget now, he started that Michigan game and made 7 tackles. Yeah. He's a guy that's really talented as well.
A lot of talent back there. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. And going into the offseason, Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer had to make a decision when it comes to the starting quarterback in the fall. Has to make that decision based on the spring and probably fall camp too. But there's going to be a lot of interest in this position. Here's Coach DeBoer on what it's going to take for one of these 3 guys, and we'll talk more about them in a moment, that are competing for this starting job to win the position.
Well, I mean, it's got to be a guy that can deliver the ball, command the huddle, command everything we do with the team, just that presence and that belief and confidence in your signal caller. And so, you know, it starts with a lot of that, just the belief. But the belief comes because you're making the throws and, you know, you're getting the ball to the guys in a fashion where they can go make their plays and you know, reap the rewards of all the work that they put in.
All right, Rod, let me bring you in to run these quarterbacks down. Let's start with the 2 returnees, Ty Simpson and Austin Mack. Not a ton of experience, but Mack was in the system at Washington. Simpson's going into his 4th year. Both played a little bit last year. So let's start with Simpson and Mack.
Well, I think all of them have a tremendous amount of arm talent. There you see Austin Mack right there delivering this ball. Throws it effortlessly. Ty Simpson, same thing. You know, here's the thing, Gary. None of them have much experience. I mean, Ty's got the most experience. He's been here. He's going on his 4th year. He's only thrown 50 passes. He's yet to throw his first touchdown pass here at Alabama. So not much experience, but a lot of tools. A strong arm, great athlete. You look at Austin Mack, as you mentioned, 6'6", 230. When you look at him, that's how you draw him up. Tremendous arm talent. Again, I just think it's the lack of experience.
Yeah, you watch Mack, he just kind of flicks that wrist and gets a lot of loft. And, of course, the true freshman, Keelan Russell. Right out of high school, he was 175 when they signed him. He's up to 192 already, and that's what they listed him at for the spring roster. And this is a guy who, even though he is straight out of high school, there's a lot of people that I've talked to, Rodney, and you have as well, that feel like he could push those other 2 guys.
He's a real talent. I'm telling you, there's a reason why he went from a 3-star to the Gatorade National Player of the Year. You look at him, 6'3", now you said 190 as they list him. And a lot of people compare him to Jaden Daniels. I see the comparison. I see some things that he does, too, that remind me of Bryce Young when he scrambles out.
Me too.
Keeps his eyes
downfield.
Yeah. I mean, he can do some things on the run that are really impressive. And there you see him running the ball. He can really pick them up and move them.
Funny you said that. I thought the same thing. When he's scrambling, he's not scrambling to run first, even though he can run, as you can see. He's scrambling to throw that ball down the field a lot like Bryce Young. All right, spring football is off and running, but we're just getting started here on TITV. Coming up, big week for Alabama basketball. The men looking to secure a double bye at the SEC tournament, and the Alabama women got their resume win last week against LSU. Now they head into the SEC tournament with a lot of confidence and a first-team All-SEC performer in Sarah Ashley Barker. We'll have all that coming up for you next. And in just a little bit, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. No basketball game tonight, so maybe we'll get more phone calls. We've been going up against basketball, it seems like, every week. 205-348 WVUA, that's 348-9882. There's the email address on your screen. The only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide will return right after this. Stay with us.
I'm going to take most of the blame in the last 30 seconds. It's on me. Got subbed our bigs out to get the rebound before I should have. Shouldn't have subbed them out until after we secured the rebound. So that was on me, and then I had a chance to call timeout. Coaches can call timeouts on the underneath out of bounds play. And at 4, I should have called it. I thought we were getting it in, and that's on me.
Another reason why Nate Oats is one of the best. Secure enough to say, hey, put it on me. I mean, that shows class and character to me. Even though he wishes he could have that final 30 seconds back, I guarantee you that's why he is one of the best. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. And Rodney, you were on my radio show on Monday morning on Tide 100.9 FM, and we discussed this. That game in that final 30, 40 seconds went from Alabama's going to win, to Alabama's going to have a chance to win, till we'll probably go to overtime, to Tennessee wins. Mm-hmm. Tennessee winning was probably the least scenario that was going to play out there, but that's the way it happened. Now you get a gut punch, man. You got to pick yourself up and get ready for Florida and Auburn, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're right. This Alabama team has done it before. I mean, again, we could go back to the Ole Miss game. When they got dominated, it was a different fashion of loss, but at the same time, they've picked themselves up a few times. You had back-to-back losses to Auburn and Missouri. Alabama picked themselves back up. I expect them to do that because of that mental toughness that they have. But again, like you said, it's going to be really difficult. You got Florida and Auburn coming up. Tough.
Yeah, let's roll some of that video, and we can we've been talking about it, and kind of show you how it played out here. I mean, it was just a everything that could go wrong for Alabama did go wrong. I mean, like Crimson Tide right here is in control, but we know what happened. Rodney, listen, it's basketball, it's sports, it happens. Alabama's been on the other side of some of those where it looks like you're going to lose and you win. But what can you learn, as heartbreaking as it is, and apply going forward that if you're in this situation again, that maybe this game can help you out?
Yeah, no, I think just the opportunities that you had there at the end and, the way the scenarios played out, I'm sure that Nate Oats and his staff have gone over every single one of those and have said, hey, next time this is what we'll do. Sometimes, and look, I know these guys make a lot of money to make these decisions. Things are going fast. Things are missed. And, what's the likelihood of that guy hitting that shot?
Not very likely, but he got an open look. In the final 36 seconds, Alabama up 76-72. Chaz Lanier got fouled by Grant Nelson, made the free throw. Then on a free throw attempt, Jaron Stevenson called for a foul. They tied it at 76. As you saw, Alabama couldn't get it in with 3.8 seconds. And then Meshack hits a 35-footer. They did not do a good job of guarding him up the floor. And like Nate Oats said, you absolutely have to call timeout in that situation when you're trying to get the ball in. But Bama loses it, and now they need to win tomorrow night. If they win tomorrow night, they still secure a double bye at the SEC tournament, and also they could still get in with a double bye if Missouri loses its last 2 games. But they want to take care of business tomorrow night at home on senior night against the Florida Gators.
No doubt. And Gary, you mentioned what the double bye and the opportunities that they still have. I mean, look, last year we saw how they the stretch was tough. I mean, it really was. They get knocked out of the SEC tournament by Florida right off the bat, but they bounced back, played really, really well, obviously earned a Final Four opportunity. And you know what? Everything's still in front of them.
And keep in mind, too, they go to Auburn on Saturday with a chance for a little payback there. The Tigers have already clinched the SEC regular season championship, so still a lot to play for before the SEC tournament. Then the SEC tournament next week in Nashville, and Alabama hopes that it can still secure a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament. That loss to Tennessee hurts, but it doesn't keep Alabama out of it. Tied a 3.5-point favorite tomorrow night. It is senior night, but this note, Latrell Reitzel and Houston Millette will not go through senior night activities, as Coach Nate Oats says he expects them to get their medical red shirt and be back next season. All right, let's get to the Alabama women. What a win last week against LSU. A big resume win, biggest win of the season over the #7 Tigers. Now, they were not able to follow that up with a road win at Oklahoma. They lost a tough one, a competitive game in Norman. But this game right here, Rodney, puts them in line, I think, for a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which means they would host the first 2 games here in Tuscaloosa. Hopefully they win the first and get to play a second. But Sarah Ashley said today, we want to play at home again. She's first team All-SEC. This is her last season. Got the SEC tournament. They will play the Auburn, Florida winner next week up in Greenville, South Carolina. But this basketball team, I think, has a chance to do something special.
They do. I mean, we talked about it early in the season. We thought that they had an opportunity to be a team that would, you didn't want to say a sleeper per se, but certainly could make a lot of noise. And they have, obviously, the improvement that they've shown to be able to knock off LSU. Program just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, and in that game with Oklahoma all the way down to the wire out in Norman on Sunday. Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama Gymnastics gets its first conference win of the season, and they did it on the road. And also, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, that phone number, 205-348-9882. Let us hear from you. TITV will return right after this break. A lot of fun in Fayetteville on Friday night for Alabama Gymnastics. They hadn't won a meet since the opening meet against North Carolina. Hadn't won an SEC meet all year. And here they go into Fayetteville and they win on the road. Season high score of 197.650 to beat Arkansas. Get a lot of momentum, had some great individual performances, and now they're going to have their final home meet and senior night this Friday at 7 p.m. But way to go, Bama, picking up some steam here as we close in on the postseason. And welcome back into TITV, presented by Visit Tuscaloosa. Let's get on the phone line, and Steve over in Trustful is going to lead us off. Hey, Steve.
Hey, guys. First of all, I want to let you know I really enjoy the show. My question is concerning, I believe it's Jalen Hale, the wide receiver who hurt his knee last year. I was wondering how much he's going to be able to participate in spring practice, or if he's going to be held out with some of the other players that Coach DeBoer mentioned the other day.
Steve, Coach DeBoer did not mention Jalen Hill as a guy that was going to miss any practices. We knew that he was going to at least participate on some level to some extent, but he didn't, say anything in terms of him being limited. But I tell you what, this wide receiver group, you talk about the recap that we did on TighterInsider.com, Gary, talked about the wide receivers. We think it's a group of receivers that have a chance to really make a lot of improvement. When you talk about the length with Jalen Hale, Derek Meadows, the true freshman, Isaiah Horton, the transfer from Miami, this is a group I think is going to take a big step.
All right, thanks for the phone call, Steve. Let's get to our email question today, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, serving your family like our family. All right, let's get to it. It is from Jamie in Haleyville. Do you think the NCAA will have new rules this fall penalizing players or teams caught faking injuries? It's a great question. There's been a lot of discussion about it. Rodney, what do you know?
Well, last week I saw something about it. Now, I don't have the specifics, but yeah, they're talking about like a delay of game type penalty, I think, Gary, is what it would basically come down to. And there you see one Alabama last year. But look, we've seen this going on in college football for I don't know how long. So hopefully they do implement something that will stop this.
All right. Still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama baseball remains dominant. Boy, what a great start for the Crimson Tide. And we'll try to squeeze in some more phone calls. Go ahead and give us a ring, 205-348-9882. We'll be right back. What a start for Alabama baseball. They just kept it going this past weekend, sweeping North Dakota State at the Joe to make them 12-0. They've now broken into the top 25 in all the major polls. Offensively, they're near the top of every category, and Justin LeBron is an early candidate for the Golden Spikes Award, which goes to the College Baseball Player of the Year. He is batting .382 with 8 home runs and 28 runs batted in going into this game. against Jacksonville State, and I know he's added more RBI in that game. Right now, Alabama leads Jacksonville State over in Jacksonville 12-1 in the bottom of the ninth. So they're about to win again to move to 13-0. And welcome back into TITV. We got time to squeeze in another email or two, I'm told, Rodney. So let's get right to it. And let's take a look at what we've got on tap coming up here in the email category. And it is from Steve in Tuscaloosa. Will Tennessee men's basketball ever come back to Tuscaloosa and play the Tide? Well, they were here last year. Unfortunately, Steve, they won that one too. They've won 4 in a row against Alabama right now. They've kind of got, I think that might be 5 in a row. I think that would have been 5 in a row Saturday. They're the one team in the SEC, Rodney, that seems to have Nate Oats and Alabama's number. Yeah.
Rick Barnes seems to have Alabama's number. You're right.
But they're going to be coming back, and hopefully Alabama gets a little payback. That's for sure. They need to get it. All right, one more email question here to get to. Let's get to one from Dennis in Tuscaloosa. How can Mark Pope complain about the officiating when Alabama gets done wrong every game? Talking about the Kentucky head coach who also wants to play 40 games during the regular season. I can't figure that one out. That's what coaches do. They complain about officiating. They just do, Rodney. They never think about the games where they get the calls that go their way. When they don't, they complain. So
you're right.
Just part of what they do. All right. Thanks for the emails and the phone calls. Still to come on TITV. Alabama softball has gotten it together, and they have been dominant lately. We'll check in on the Tide when this edition of TITV on a kind of ominous Tuesday night weather-wise. But Richard Scott's in the Weather Center keeping an eye on that. If anything happens, we'll break in to coverage here on WVOA 23. We'll be back after this. Boy, Alabama softball got on a roll, didn't they? After kind of a sluggish start to the season with that 1-4 showing down at the Clearwater Shriners Children's Invitational in Florida. They've come back and been beating everybody and been beating them bad. A lot of run rule games. Then the Crimson Classic this past weekend. Won 5 games, 5-0, beat UAB twice. They're now 35-0 all-time against UAB. And they just beat Sanford a little while ago over in Birmingham, 9-2. Bama is rolling. All right, back here on TITV, I want to congratulate Sean Payton Love, former Alabama men's basketball player. Just won his 2nd state championship with the Paul Bryant Stampede. And we're going to go ahead and close it out now and remind you that TITV, if you missed it, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVOA 23 or find it anytime at WVOA23.com. All right, we're going to leave you tonight with some video of last week's 1 Yard at a Time gala over in Birmingham, put on by the Letterman of the USA and former Alabama football player Darrell Furman. This annual fundraising event held at the club, and they do incredible work for veterans, man. I mean, they really help wounded veterans, disaster victims, former college athletes in need. What a great event. Darrell Furman, they called him the Bull when he played here as a walk-on linebacker under Ray Perkins and Bill Curry. He's doing some great work. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.